I am very pleased to present a woman. There have been a number of people who have said, I know many of you have heard this line, Atlas Shrugged changed my life. The Fountainhead changed my life. Here's a woman who's read by millions around the world. She may be our most debated philosopher. She identifies that to which she adheres as objectivism. We'll talk about it. We care very much about your sharing with us your feelings about this most interesting lady, a warm human being who has a lot to say and comes straight at everything she says. I am pleased to present Ayn Rand. Miss Rand. Ayn Rand is here, and it's about time we said hello after hearing so much about you, and you're not really altogether that available to the media. I know you do a radio show, and there have been other occasions, but let's see what I can do here now in trying to help the world understand. Those who may not be as familiar with your work. You don't go for altruism and charity and do good and liberal and...
No. And conservative. You might as well add it all.
You don't like the conservatives either?
No. Well, not today's conservatives.
All right. I want to help people. I want to do good for other people. What's so bad about that?
Nothing. If you do it by your own choice, and if it's not your primary aim in life, and if you don't regard it as a moral virtue, on those conditions, it's fine to help people if you want to.
Why can't I think of it as a moral virtue? I mean, can't I take some vows for myself for doing all these good things?
Because that would be cannibalism. Because that would mean that you preach altruism, which means not merely kindness, but self-sacrifice. It means that you place the welfare of others above your own, that you live for others, for the sake of helping them, and that justifies your life. That's immoral, according to my morality.
I don't understand why you have to be so harsh in your evaluation of those people. Why call it immoral? Why don't you just say, why don't you say it's a waste of time? Why pass judgment on me?
Because look at the state of the world today.
Yeah.
And you cannot be harsh enough on those who created it. And those who created it are the philosophers of altruism. It's those who preach self-sacrifice, selflessness, self-abnegation, all the anti-self theories, which means anti-man. All those who demand man's sacrifice, they have succeeded, and look at the results in the world.
That's a theory or a way of life or a philosophic idea which is advanced by religions, that we should sacrifice for others.
That's right.
All right, I want to make sure I understand you, Miss Rand. Why is it so... I'm still not quite sure why you're so harsh on those who would sacrifice for other people.
Because I look at them. Just look at them. Because they don't hesitate to sacrifice whole nations. Look at Russia. Communism is based on altruism. Look at Nazi Germany. The Nazis were more explicit than even the Russians in preaching self-sacrifice and altruism, and self-sacrifice for the state, for the folk, the people. Every dictatorship is based on altruism. Now you can't fight it by merely saying it's a difference of opinion. It's a difference of life and death.
So your view is that if we all became more comfortable with our natural tendencies, that is to say, selfishness, there would be less horror, less war, less Hitler?
There wouldn't be any.
So the more selfish we are, the more kind, the more tranquil and peaceful the world in which we live?
And more benevolent toward other people, if we're rationally selfish. By that I mean a selfishness which can justify one's every action rationally. not the kind of whim worship, as I call it, which consists of just indulging your own desires and urges of the moment. And there is no innate, natural idea, you know.
There isn't, huh?
No.
Well, I have a lot of innate tendencies.
You think they're innate. You know what I would say? Check your premises.
Check my premises?
Yeah. Check the basic ideas behind any feelings that you might feel at the moment, and you'll see that your feeling comes from your premises, good or bad, but they held subconsciously, they will direct your feelings, and you will think it's innate, right, but it isn't.
How do you avoid, let's take your thesis then and accept it now. I'm going to be selfish. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be real talented and charismatic, and I'm going to develop a lot of wealth, and I'm going to have a lot of money and a lot of banks, and pretty soon nobody's going to be able to compete with me because I've already purchased all my competitors. And now I have dictatorial power over people, and I can name the price of bacon or price of oil or whatever it is, the commodity I'm selling.
You know, I agree with you that you're very talented and you could accomplish a great deal and already have, but you're talking about the impossible. In a free society, nobody can become a monopolist or a dictator. The system itself, the free market, will destroy you.
How do you explain Mobil Oil? Exxon? How do you explain the prices that they're able to charge for it?
I think that they're stupid appeasers who get too little and put up with too much.
Who? The oil companies?
Yes.
Now,
yes, here you have to let me explain.
All right.
If President Carter's own policy admits that we need the oil company and that the lack of oil is a serious national crisis, right, which might lead to the stoppage of all industry. If that is what we need, by what right can we tell those men, go ahead and produce what we want, while we're insulting you, while we're trying to control your business, and while we're not leaving you that which you produced? Today, it's crudely obvious if we need the oil companies, we have only one of two choices. Either we produce oil ourselves, and no government has ever done it or can do it, or we have to accept the oil companies' terms, pay them whatever they can get. The more they get, the more credit to them, because that means the country needs it and pays them. They have produced something needed by the people. And we must say thank you instead of putting or proposing to put a tax on them in order to give the money to the government who does nothing. The government doesn't contribute anything except impediments.
All right. But if we allow the oil companies to have the power which you say has come to them because we need the oil, it's a question of supply and demand.
Yes.
So if we approach this laissez-faire, as I think you would like us to, free of government intervention, right, free of all the force and the regulation and the controls which you abhor.
Right.
All right. Now we've got Mr. Gigantic Oil Baron saying $2.50 a barrel, a gallon. Now, here's what happens. The blue-collar guy who's trying to make a living and feed his kids can't buy gas for his truck, can't possibly survive in the free marketplace, and suddenly he's on welfare, and he's got to go for a handout, another feature of government that you abhor. You can't have it both ways.
But all this is economic fallacies. To begin with, nobody in a free society, now we're talking about a free market, yeah, in which the government doesn't interfere, nobody can become a monopolist. All monopolies are created by a special privilege for government. It's only by an act of government that you can keep competitors out of your field. Therefore, you couldn't become that kind of monopoly. The power you hold as an industrialist is not the power to use force. It's the power of producing something of value.
That people want.
And it's the people who literally control you, because every purchase is a vote in the favor of some businessmen and in a way against others. It's the public who decides what they want to buy and what they pass up. If, using your examples, you became this powerful tycoon economically, but you can, as an industrialist, it's not the power to use force. It's the power of producing something of value.
That people want.
And it's the people who literally control you, because every purchase is a vote in the favor of some businessman and in a way against others. It's the public who decides what they want to buy and what they pass up. If, using your examples, you became this powerful tycoon economically, but you cannot force anybody to deal with you, and you cannot force competitors out of your field, then every smaller man would be in that field because you would have established a price way above the market. You might last months, if that.
So, in other words, if I tried to be Mr. Big and charge outrageously high prices for gasoline,
broke.
I would go broke, in your view, because in your leave them alone and let competition handle it approach to civilization, somebody with a better mousetrap, pardon my mixed metaphor.
No, that's a very good one.
All right, would come along and undercut me.
That's right.
Sell at a cheaper price.
But isn't just my view.
You know what I'll do? I'll buy him up the minute I see this bird. I'll buy him. I'll own him on Tuesday.
And where will you get your money when you're not
I'm already
allowed?
holding them up for $2.50 a gallon.
But they're not paying you. You say they're all going out of business.
They've got to get to work. We're married to a petroleum civilization.
All
There's no way
right.
to...
This has been done, you know. It isn't incidentally just my view. That is history. There are people who have tried to corner the market repeatedly, and the result was that they went broke.
Let me see if I understand you now. How do you see if this has got it? You're saying, in effect, that the oil companies have this power because we gave it to them. We gave it to them with our large cars that need a lot of gasoline. We gave it to them with our wasteful practices of energy. We have such a tremendous demand and need and reliance on oil that we, in effect, have given the people who produce the oil the power over us.
No.
Tell me where that's wrong.
Because the oil producers are not the only people whom we patronize, and not the only people who supply a need. Even if, which I say if, it never happens, but let's suppose one oil man cornered the market, he has competition from every other industry who produce other things which we need. Therefore, we cannot give all the power to one company, even if in a given field we patronize only that company. That company is competing with every other producer. And the moment you charge too much and somebody can give us the same product at a lower price, he'll put you out of business.
Okay. You realize, of course, that your critics suggest that this is a pie-in-the-sky, unpractical notion that you're offering to us, and that it sounds wonderful as you gather with the intellectuals at some university, but it doesn't work out on the street.
Quite the opposite. It's in the universities that it doesn't work, because all the leftist ideas and all the misrepresentation of capitalism come from leftist liberal professors. The universities are the real villains in the picture.
Okay. All right. You want...
But
okay,
I must make one slight postscript. I don't give a damn about my critics.
You don't, huh?
No. Because I have not heard a good one.
You haven't heard a good one?
No.
Okay.
Someone who would be honest and discuss the issues without misrepresentation.
Let's try and walk into some other areas here in the brief time we have. And this is a little frustrating because I've got a lot of folks out here who want to question you. You do not accept the existence of a God, a divine prime mover, right?
No.
Now, the reason you don't is because you can't prove that such a entity or being or energy exists.
I can't, nor can anyone else. There is no proof.
There is no proof that there is no... so therefore, you've concluded that there isn't one.
That's right.
You can't prove there isn't.
You are never called upon to prove a negative. That's a law of logic.
All right. Why can't we have you say, Mr. Donahue, I can't prove there's a God, so I just have to take a pass on that one. No comment. I don't know. Why don't you say I don't know rather than I'm sure there isn't?
Because you can't accept, even as a hypothesis, something for which there is no evidence. I couldn't
I think there's circumstantial evidence.
There isn't any.
Oh, this is pretty impressive, huh?
It's magnificent.
No,
It's
I mean the universe.
Built by man.
The universe. You've got to be impressed with the universe. When you see order in the universe, this wasn't an accident, Miss Rand.
Oh, now you've got to give me a few minutes. What do you think would happen in a disorderly universe?
In a disorderly universe?
What's the concept of order? What does it have to do with the things which exist? If they clashed with each other, if there were contradictions, they wouldn't exist. There is no such thing as a disorderly universe. Our whole concept of order comes from observing reality. And reality has to be orderly because it's the standard of what exists.
Right. So
the contradictions cannot exist.
Okay, so we have an orderly universe because it's impossible to have a disorderly universe.
That's
I got
right.
that. I understood that.
Fine.
Do you understand what a breakthrough that is, that I understood that?
Oh!
All right, now, having accepted that, I still don't understand why can't you just leave the door open? Why do you have to be so unforgiving and so final and so, don't talk to me about it, you can't prove it, and anybody who goes around believing it is wasting time? Okay, we'll get out there and give you that chance in a moment.
He's quite right.
Yeah, he thinks God can be proved. But
That's right, and shouldn't be.
Okay, yes.
But the real issue here, as far as man is concerned, is that when you accept
All right.
such an important issue as the creation of the universe,
Yes.
on faith, you're destroying your confidence and the validity of your own mind. It has to be either reason or faith. I am against God for the reason that I don't want to destroy reason. I don't...
Give us a chance, all right? We appreciate your zeal, but if you continue that, it's going to make it difficult for the other people to absorb what's going on here.
He says, how can I be against God? I'm against those who conceived that idea.
Tell us why. Tell us why.
Because then it gives man permission to function irrationally, to accept something above and outside the power of their reason and superior to reason.
And what's so bad about that? Why can't I be a reasonable philosopher walking around wondering what it's all about, struggling, striving, trying to understand, enjoying the quest and the journey, and then in the last little part of my consciousness I say, I know you're there somewhere. I don't understand why you did it this way, but I'm certainly can't wait to die and find out.
Because that...
Tell me, I'm not grandstanding. Do you understand that?
Are you?
I'm not trying to be cute now. I'm honestly trying to understand, and I know that it's easy to step on a person of your controversial view and wave a flag, and I don't want to do that.
No,
but
I know.
do you appreciate the question? Do you understand? Why are those two things not possible?
Yes, you said it, I think, unintentionally. You said, so I can't wait to die and find out. That, I'm serious, is one of the results of acting on faith. You can't wait to get out of this life.
And what's wrong with that?
Because this life is wonderful, as you said. Because if you look at the universe, it's wonderful. And you have to use your life to the best of your understanding. If you go by emotions, not reason, it means you're going against reality. Something exists, something is right, and you say, no, I don't like it, because I want to believe something else.
I see.
You, in effect, go by emotions, by your whims, not by reason.
And religion or the God concept or faith or worship has people thinking of life as a veil of tears through which you
That's
will
right.
probably not get without falling. You are essentially an evil person who is bent toward...
Well, most religions do preach just that.
You don't believe that?
God, no.
You think that life should be a celebration?
Yes.
We're lucky to be here? We should be happy to be
We
here.
cannot be lucky,
all right.
because if we weren't here, we wouldn't be.
Must be a celebration?
Yes.
We're lucky to be here? We should be happy to be here.
We cannot be
Okay,
lucky,
all right.
because if we weren't here, we wouldn't be. There's no such
right.
thing.
Okay, so
as-
it's not a crap game that we're
Exactly.
here. We are here, and we should celebrate it, use it, enjoy it, be selfish.
Right.
There's a virtue in selfishness.
Right.
And we got ourselves in trouble when we started using government to force us to be good because we had this notion that we had a sort of bad nature.
Right. And if we have a bad nature, we have no self-esteem. If we have no self-esteem, any demagogue can have us. He can order us about because we wouldn't consider ourselves valuable enough to be free. You will be anxious to follow anyone because you don't trust yourself. Right. So that self-esteem is a precondition of freedom.
Right. All right, so you're obviously against forced government anything. Busing, right?
Oh, certainly.
You're against taxes, forced taxation?
That would be the last reform that I would advocate.
But you don't really think it's going to be possible to have a community of men without forced mandated taxes?
No, I wrote it, and I won't go into details, about an alternative, which would be voluntary taxation. Voluntary contributions to the government, because we need the government.
Do you know why they're going, because they don't think it won't work?
Oh, not if you had to contribute 90% or even 50% of your income. That wouldn't work. But the government doesn't cost that much. The government's proper function is only to protect your rights. And that means to protect men from those who initiate force. So the government protects the peace, internal peace. That means the policemen. The government runs the Army and Navy, protection from outside forces, and law courts, so that citizens who disagree can settle their disputes peacefully. That's the only functions of government.
All right. So you like an individual who stands up, man or woman, does what he, she wants to do. You have literally liberated millions of people around the world by merely saying to them in your novels, you want to do it? Do it.
That's exactly, that's true. And if I help them, I'm delighted. But I didn't.
Original sin sure takes a beating in your writings, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, yes.
Yeah. You don't think that we're born with sin on us?
Do you?
Huh?
I have never met a person who really could believe that.
Well, but see, if you fool around with original sin, there goes the whole idea of Christianity. If there is no original... Wait a minute. If there's no original sin, then why do we need Calvary? Why do we need the crucifixion? From what are we redeemed?
Well, but that is the most important thing. Look at, if you take Jesus Christ as an ideal human being, and that is properly the view of Christians, what do you do with your ideal being? You put him on the cross, you torture him and murder him for the sake of those who are less virtuous. Is that a proper example to set?
For the sake of those who are less virtuous?
Yeah, for the sinners, to redeem their sins, as you say.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a monstrous idea. If I were a Christian, I would resent it enormously. The ideal men are to be appreciated and followed.
And listened to.
And listened to,
but
not crucified.
But our evil nature makes us rebel against those who would bring us.
Oh, that's a nice excuse, you know. If you commit a murder and then say, but I'm evil by nature, I couldn't help it.
The devil made me do it.
Yeah. Incidentally, my philosophy includes free will.
It does.
That you have the choice. Only free will consists of your capacity to think or not. Okay. If you think, you made the right choice. If you evade, that's the mortal sin according to my philosophy.
You were born in Russia, Leningrad, what is now Leningrad.
Yeah.
You graduated from the University of Leningrad.
That's right.
You recently celebrated your 50th wedding anniversary to the same man.
That's right.
We're in New York City with Ayn Rand, and we'll be back in just a moment. This is the Felt Forum of the Madison Square Garden. That is Ayn Rand, the philosopher who's created such a stir everywhere with books, which incidentally sell in numbers approaching 8,000 per month. Per month, even today. Yeah.
Miss Rand, in your novels, you portray very strong women. I was wondering why you think in the world we don't have strong women leaders.
Because if you're speaking about women's liberation, that whole movement, it's a very false and phony issue. Women are human beings, so they need leaders just like men in certain professions. If in their own profession they don't need leaders, but let's say in politics, they need leaders who are men or women as the leaders have earned. There is no such thing as specifically a leader of women, just as it would be ridiculous to say you have leaders of only men.
Well, but the point is that women feel, because of the cultural inhibitors that have been placed on women, some sort of woman leadership is needed to compensate and to break those barriers and to make good all the grievances of the past.
You can do it only by education. If women feel that there is prejudice against them,
yes,
you do it by spreading the right idea that women intellectually are not the inferior of men.
Of course not, but
physically they certainly are.
That's what feminists are doing. They're standing up and educating.
No, they're asking for government power and government handouts. They go around depriving men of jobs because you have to have quota of so many women.
But their point is that they have been denied jobs all these years. So let's get at it and start swinging for it.
You do not fight an evil if they think they're victims. I don't. But let us say, assuming that women have been treated unfairly, you don't fight an evil by adopting it and practicing it.
Well, what should they do? Be nice little girls and not say anything and stay home and break bread?
No.
Well, what should they do?
Go into any career of their choice except longshoremen or professional football player, as they're trying today, and fight for their career as every man has to fight.
Would you fight for anything?
How did I get here?
I'm disappointed, though, that here we have all this, you don't deny that there have been grievances. You don't deny sexism. You don't deny prejudice against women.
I deny all that except unequal wages. There have been.
You're telling me you think
jobs.
Women have had the same opportunities, that they haven't been given blinders by a culture that said they should be a nurse instead of a doctor?
No.
That they should be long-suffering and nurturing instead of a composer?
Not in this country. If you're talking about Europe, it might be different. Here, you can get anything regardless of your sex, because all you have to do is show your ability. And if someone is prejudiced and doesn't hire you, the intelligent employer will.
Over here.
I want to change the topic and go back to something you said about industry. 15 years ago, I was impressed with your books, and I sort of felt that your philosophy was proper. Today, however, I'm more educated, and I find that if a company...
This is what I don't answer.
Oh, wait a minute, you haven't heard the question yet.
She's already estimated her position and my work, incidentally, displaying the quality of her brain. If she says today she is more educated...
I am more educated now than I was 15 years ago when I was in high school, before I went to college, and before I read the newspapers.
I'm not interested in your biography.
Let her make her point. Let her make her point. Let her make her point.
It's very basic. If a company is permitted to do what it wants to do, like ITT, you wind up with ITT in Nazi Germany doing whatever it damn well please, and any other company in the United States doing the same thing. Conglomerates are not monopolies. They can do whatever they want. ITT owns everything, from baking companies to telephone companies to munitions plants. I mean, I really think that's wrong. And I really think that they
Miss Rand thinks it's wrong, too, but she's saying that it's not government force that's going to correct the problem.
I don't think government force is going to correct the problem either, but
she's saying that if we back away and just let this invisible hand, the work and competition and free enterprise happen according to its own inclinations, we're not going to have abuse, and abuse and evil will fall of its own weight.
I don't believe that. And government force is going to correct the problem either, but
she's saying that if we back away and just let this invisible hand, the work and competition and free enterprise happen according to its own inclinations, we're not going to have abuse, and abuse and evil will fall of its own weight.
I don't believe that. I can't believe it because money is power. And the more money you have, the more power you have.
Can we encourage you to make a contribution to that observation?
I will not answer anyone who is impolite, but to show you,
She wasn't impolite.
I do not sanction impoliteness, and I am not the victim of hippies. But
Hippie.
that's where it started. The dropping of politeness and of manner.
You're equating someone who disagrees with you with impoliteness. That's not fair.
No. If you didn't, if you didn't interrupt me, I would have demonstrated what I mean. I will to show you that I'm not evading the question. If anyone else wants to ask the same question politely, I'll be delighted to answer.
Well, there was nothing impolite. You are punishing this woman for the vigor and energy that she brought to the dialogue. And that's not fair to her. This is the kind of woman we spend a long time trying to attract to our television audience. And now you are...
Fine.
Okay, just for
Teach
this...
her some manners. I will now
Miss
repeat
Rand,
what she said.
Miss Rand.
She said, I used to agree with you, but now that I'm more educated. What does that mean?
Well, that means she now has a different view. There's nothing personal about that observation. Don't be so sensitive.
I am going to be. I intend to be.
We're in New York City with Ayn Rand, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back with Ayn Rand. Yes.
Do you see any reason at all for giving social aid to people, whether welfare or if someone is disabled?
Do you see any reason for social aid, for welfare, for charity?
Only private charity, not through government and not through force, not with tax money. But I want to answer the preceding question. Doesn't anybody want to ask it
sure.
politely?
Yes. Your question asks this audience to agree with your assessment of the questioner, and I don't think they will. That's the problem.
All of them? Then why do they want to listen to me at all?
All right, does anybody want to ask Yes. Do you want to? All right. Hang on just a moment. Come on. You want to stand?
I am surprised that someone with the intelligence of Miss Rand can be so emotional in her approach.
I can answer you. I didn't come here to be judged. I came here to answer questions. A question asked in the following form. I used to agree with you, but now that I'm more educated, I don't, is an insult which I cannot sanction.
All right.
I am not interested in the woman's history. She didn't have to begin it that way, and that's what I want to register my protest against.
Hang on just a moment. How do we keep ITT from developing too much power, or any multinational conglomerate in your world of
We
objectivity?
don't give them government privileges. All monopolies, such as ITT, is sanctioned by government. It's the government that makes this field a monopoly and forbids the entrance of competitors. All the things that this lady cited as example, I had covered before by simply pointing out that the free market does not produce monopolies and never has in history. If you look at any monopoly, you'll see that it's held in power by an act of government, by government privilege. And what we have today is a mixed economy. It's not capitalism. Okay.
Miss Rand? In your book, Atlas Shrugged, isn't it true that you gave a blueprint for the world takeover by the Illuminati?
By whom?
The Illuminati.
Who's the Illuminati?
The Illuminati is the international bankers, Rothschild, the Rockefellers, and all the Bilderbergers.
But
were all part of it.
you think her philosophy then would lead to capitalist control of everything?
Her Atlas Shrugged, she gives an exact blueprint for 8 years of the world takeover, and it's in force right now.
You accept that, Ms. Rand?
Certainly not. To begin with, I never heard of any such conspiracies. Certainly Rockefeller is hardly an example of capitalism, and what Atlas Shrugged gives you is a blueprint for how to be free. If a person feels that he'd rather be enslaved and poor, but not let anyone be successful and rich, well, that's what Atlas Shrugged is against.
I'd like to know your opinion on the United States' foreign policy and what is happening in the Middle East right now.
Right now, I'm not sure we know what's happening. I think that the United States foreign policy has been disgraceful for years, for decades. I would say roughly since the New Deal, and in part even before that. But if you mean whose side should one be on, Israel or the Arabs, I would certainly say Israel because it's the advanced, technological, civilized country amidst a group of almost totally primitive savages who have not changed for years and who are racist and who resist Israel because it's bringing industry and intelligence and modern technology into their stagnation.
Miss Rand,
Over here.
Miss Rand, am I correct? Am I correct to assume that according to your philosophy that you are a perfect being?
I never judge myself that way. I judge myself in the following way. Have I absorbed and practiced all of the principles of behavior which I preach? Then I would say yes, resoundingly.
Over here, Ms. Rand. Can you see me? Over here.
Ms. Rand, at this time, are you planning or writing another book?
I'm just planning one.
Apropos your atheism, how do you account about the millions of people in the Christian religion who have validated the philosophies that God is alive?
Validated them by what? By behaving, by doing good works, and
By the doctors of the church, arguments by the...
oh, I see. It's this man's position that you can you can validate the existence of God, that it's possible to do that.
Has not been done. The nearest anyone ever came to it was Thomas Aquinas, and he was a very great philosopher, but he could not prove it. Nobody has ever proved it.
In relationship to your atheism, how do you think that ITT and Xerox and General Motors won't overrun the world with their power? Do you believe that there is some powerful good, like 360 degrees, that always has to come back to good?
No.
What do you think is going to make them stop the monopolies or over
Acquisition of more power.
I have already made clear, A, I don't believe that they're evil. B, they don't have the power to run the world. Money is not power in the political sense. You cannot buy control.
But it's power in the practical sense. I mean, if you have to pay $5 a gallon to get to work, $1.50 for a head of lettuce, your children have to eat, they have to be educated. Our system has set it up that you can only get a good education if you're willing to pay for it. So if you want us to be educated...
Not necessarily. I would support the early Americans who educated their own children. And some of the most successful men of the 19th century never went to college. And today, those who didn't go to college are more intelligent and better informed and less easily fooled than the people who did go to college.
I assume you're against compulsory education.
Pardon?
You're against compulsory education, I'm
Yes.
sure.
No.
You're against compulsory education, I'm
Yes.
sure.
No, I'm against public-funded education because that's the sure way to create a country of people disposed towards dictatorship, and that's what you're seeing today.
And we'll be back with Ayn Rand in just a moment. We're back with so little time. Listen, there was a Miss Rand. We're with Ayn Rand. Incidentally, her latest book is titled, listen to this, Introduction of Objectivist Epistemology. I should have had this at Notre Dame. I would have impressed all the girls. But it is a rather multisyllabic, high-sounding title, which
it's not a novel.
Right, which speaks to your philosophy of objectivism.
That's right.
I just have one point that I think should be made, Ms. Rand, with time fleeting here. Your characterization of the situation in the Middle East came down rather gratuitously and in a very angry way on the Arabs, and without discussing the merits of either side in a most complicated and painful collision of cultures and peoples in our world. Why couldn't the men, the millions of men, women, and children who are Arab and who find themselves in this desperate conflict and look around wondering where peace will be, why can't they be angry with you for your characterization of them, your slap at them, your roundhouse criticism of them, when you don't seem to be able to tolerate a questioner who suggests that she disagrees with you? Characterization is, you do not accept any criticism unless you level it.
No, I don't resort to terrorism. I don't go around murdering my opponents, innocent women and children. That is what I have against the Arabs. That takes the conflict out of the sphere of civilized conflicts and makes it murderous. And anyone, private citizens, who resort to force is a monster. And that's what makes me condemn and despise them.
Do you believe that there is going to be a day where there's going to be a female in the White House as president? And how do you feel about that?
I wouldn't vote for her.
You would or wouldn't?
Would not.
You would not?
No.
Why not?
For many reasons. I've written an article about that in my former magazine. You'll have to find out my reasons there.
Yes.
The magazine is The Objectivist.
Would you not vote for her because she was a woman, even if she were better qualified than any man?
If we had followed that law, I might.
That low? I think you have a very, very low opinion of women.
Let me answer this. It is not to a woman's personal interest to rule men. It puts her in a very unhappy position. I don't believe that any good woman would want that position.
So you are essentially against leadership positions for women then?
No. Oh no. A president is not the only leadership position. There's senators and congressmen and
it's all right for you if they run and be elected?
Oh, certainly, and I vote for them. But wait a moment. A commander-in-chief of the army, a woman, I think it's unspeakable.
We are in New York City with Ayn Rand, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back. Yes. Go ahead.
Ms. Rand, I'd like to ask you your opinion of Golda Meir.
My opinion of Golda Meir? Oh, I think she is a very unhappy woman. She was a good leader. I don't agree with her philosophy. She's a socialist, and I think Begin is much better.
Mm-hmm. I am sorry that our time is up. There are 1,001 people with questions here that perhaps sometime in the future we'll have an opportunity to share more dialogue with you. It's been my pleasure. It's been an enlightening experience to meet the woman behind the writings that have created such a stir.
I really enjoy
Your
it.
latest book is titled Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. Many thanks to you, Ayn Rand. And to you who gathered here in Madison Square Garden, have a nice day, everybody. Goodbye. Anxious to talk about the nuclear nightmare that sat practically in their own backyard. And on our next show from New York, consumer activist Ralph Nader talks about how it could have been prevented and what he wants to happen now. Join us.